To really understand where we're going, we have to go back to the very, very beginning. I mean, before all the noise, before the constant chaos of our world, there was something else, a, a deep, profound quiet.
Just think about that for a second. No car horns, no buzzing notifications, no shouting headlines. Just quiet. The kind of quiet where you can actually hear the world the way it was meant to sound. The wind, the rivers, and maybe the steady breath of a man standing right there in the presence of God.
There was no feed to check, no pressure to perform, no fear of missing out on something. The human mind was just at peace. It was fully present, in a world without all the digital distractions and the anxiety we manufacture. This was the original human experience. It was pure, it was focused, and it was whole. Can you even imagine what that world felt like? The rustle of leaves, the smell of earth that had never known death or decay, seeing a light that had never been diminished by darkness. This was a world before fear, before sin, and before shame ever entered the human story. This was Eden.
But see, Eden wasn't just some perfect, relaxing paradise. It was so much more than that. And this is where it gets really fascinating. It was a place designed with a divine purpose, a space where heaven and earth were actually one. And at the absolute center of this story is a man. And we're not talking about a myth or some kind of abstract symbol. We're talking about a real person, Adam, formed from the very dust of the earth and then, boom, brought to life by the breath of God himself. He opened his eyes to a world that was perfectly good, standing on ground that had never, ever known death. And this idea right here helps us understand what Eden really was. The best way to think about it is as a temple garden. Now, this is a huge concept. It wasn't just a home for humanity, it was a sanctuary. It was the one place where that barrier between the divine world and the human world, well, it just didn't exist. It's where God walked with humanity, not like some distant emperor, but like a father. So Adam wasn't just a resident, hanging out in the garden. He had a job, a royal and priestly calling. Since he was made in God's image, his whole purpose was to reflect God's good character out into the world. And that command to serve and guard the garden, that's the exact same language later used for the priests who served in the temple. He was, for all intents and purposes, humanity's very first priest king, the bridge between creation and the creator.
And in that state, in that perfect relationship, there was total transparency. I mean, just imagine that for a second. To be completely 100% known by God and by another person, and to feel absolutely zero shame, no hiding, no quiet guilt, no fear of someone seeing the real you. This is what we were made for. But of course, that perfect state didn't last. The story takes a really tragic turn. And the central conflict, what we call the fall, it wasn't just about breaking a rule. It was about breaking a relationship.
This is the absolute heart of the matter. When Adam and Eve chose their own wisdom over God's, the consequence wasn't just getting in trouble. It was a catastrophic severing of that intimate, walking in the garden bond. The entire world, you could say, tilted on its axis in that one moment. And the contrast, it's just devastating. On one side, you have this open, easy communion with God. On the other, hiding in fear. The freedom of being fully known and totally unashamed gives way to hearts that are just closed off by shame. This wasn't just a mood swing, it was a fundamental rupture in reality itself. The world of life was suddenly invaded by death. And you know what? We still feel the echoes of that exile today, that quiet, nagging feeling that something is just deeply wrong with the world and with us. That longing we all have for peace, for meaning, for wholeness, it's like a collective memory. We are a people born east of Eden, and we're all a little homesick for a garden we've never actually seen. But the story doesn't end in exile, thank goodness. The Bible is really a story about restoration, and it presents a solution to the problem of Eden, and it does this through a figure that the scriptures call the second Adam.
Okay, so here's where we see this incredible, crucial point of reversal. Just look at this comparison. Adam, the first man, was tested in a perfect, lush garden, and he failed. Jesus, the second Adam, was tested in a desolate, harsh wilderness for 40 days, and he overcame.
And it continues. Where the first Adam sinfully reached out his hand and took the one thing that was forbidden, Jesus, the second Adam, lovingly offered himself as the bread of life, giving everything for everyone else. It's a perfect reversal of selfish taking into selfless giving. And the contrast just keeps going, right down to their response to sin. Adam's first reaction was to hide from God in shame. But Jesus, he was lifted up and exposed on a cross, bearing all of our shame in this ultimate act of love and vulnerability. He didn't hide. He absorbed all the consequences of our hiding.
So in a way, the cross becomes the new tree. It's like the anti-tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Planted in the soil of our broken world, it becomes the new tree of life. And from it flows forgiveness, healing, and the promise of a whole new creation. And that brings us to the final act of the story. The work that Christ did on the cross, it wasn't just about saving individual souls so they could have a disembodied afterlife. No, it was about starting the grand project of restoring Eden itself. Yeah, the end of the Bible doesn't describe us floating on clouds. The final vision is a redeemed earth. It's a new Jerusalem, a holy city. And guess what's right in the middle of it? A garden. A river of life is flowing again, and the tree of life is there, with fruit for the healing of the nations. God is finally dwelling with humanity again, face to face. So you can really see the entire biblical story through this one lens. It starts with God walking with us in a garden. It moves to our exile from it. It finds its massive turning point in the redemption Christ brings. And it all points toward a future where that garden is fully and finally restored in his kingdom. So that restlessness that you feel, that sense that the world is fractured, that ache deep in your own heart, maybe it isn't a sign that you're broken beyond repair. Maybe it's just a sign that you're homesick for Eden. And maybe Christ isn't just calling you back to a moment of forgiveness. Maybe he's calling you forward into a future of total restoration. And this quote just captures the whole journey so perfectly. The story that began with the first man in the garden, a priest king who failed, will find its ultimate conclusion in the second man, Jesus Christ, the triumphant king on the throne. And that is the ultimate promise. One day, the garden will return, not as some faint memory, but as a living, breathing reality. And every single broken thing in the world, in our relationships, and in our own hearts will be made whole. So, as we close this out, let me leave you with a thought to reflect on. When you think about that lost garden, what is it that your heart really longs for the most? Is it that perfect peace, a clear sense of purpose, or is it that unbroken, unashamed closeness with God? That longing, it's a compass, and it's pointing you toward home.